Okay, welcome everybody to the morning CAUTHE panel and the mid-year meeting, which we'll be hosting at 11:30 after morning tea. So you can't see in the room here, folks online, but we've got about 10 people. Mika, Kylie, Wendy, Kevin, Penny Joes, Bob McKercher, Chris, Anastasia, Faith, Lori, Tyler, and Simone. And hello. And Anna, hi, good to see you. So welcome everybody. I just want to start with an acknowledgement of country. So we're on the lands here of the Yugambeh people of Southeast Queensland, which has strong connections to the Bundjalung Nation in northern New South Wales. And Wollumben, if you look out the window here, you'll see Wollumben, the mountain that stands there that connects the Yugambeh and the Bundjalung, and it's a really significant and important site. So I want to acknowledge elders past and present, and the land always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So welcome to all of our people online. I can see Tracy, Joanna, Cindy, Felicity, hello, Michelle, Ina and Karen from New Zealand, Anita, Aaron, and Candice, and just the person with the wonderful background there.
Kia ora, Emma Stewart from Lincoln University.
Oh, Anna Stewart, hi, hello. Sorry there, I couldn't see your name. All right, so we have an esteemed panel with us today. Just checking face to face. Can you see everyone on the Zoom okay? All right. We have 4 panel members with us today. Dr. Anita Manfreda from Torrens University, so just give a wave there, there's Anita. Dr. Aaron Tham, who is waving there. He's up at Sunshine Coast and unfortunately teaching commitment and couldn't join us today, but he's here very much with us on Zoom. Professor Candice Harris from AUT. Hi, Candice. And Professor Perry Hobson from Breda, who's here with us on stage, who I haven't seen in a long time.
That's right.
Good to see you. And welcome, Judith. Just trying to sneak in there. So, yeah, that's okay. So the goal with today's panel, and as I was chatting with the panel members on email over recent weeks, was that I really wanted to engage our audience and our members of CAUTHE in talking not just about the challenges that we face, because we get together a couple of times a year and, you know, things sometimes aren't very good. We know the challenges and the problems that we are all dealing with in tourism, hospitality, and events education and research. And we're just coming out of the pandemic still. But I wanted the panel, which I'll chair today and moderate, to really think about acknowledging the challenges, but think about the opportunities and the constructive ways forward, and how CAUTHE in particular as an association can help. So I said to them on the email, I'd love to take a strengths rather than deficit approach if we can, have people walk away from the panel with some great reflections and food for thought, but ultimately offer some hope and action through CAUTHE to face the issues ahead. So that's the spirit in which the panel will be speaking to you today. So what I want to do is just briefly introduce the panel members. Then we've got a couple of little icebreaker questions for them. And then they're going to reflect on a central question on one challenge or opportunity that they think is important, and how we might be able to face that challenge as CAUTHE and as an association. Right, so Dr. Anita Manfreda, so congratulations to Anita, who was just awarded her doctorate.
Thank you.
People are People are clapping here face to face and online. Well done. I know that's very recent, and congratulations, Anita, and very well deserved. So
Thanks.
Anita is a senior lecturer at Blue Mountains International Hotel Management School at Torrens University, and currently co-leading the Tourism and Hospitality Research and Practice Cluster at Torrens. Prior to joining academia, Anita spent over a decade as a hospitality practitioner across Europe and Australia, and she joined us in 2023, so this year, as a co-opted member of CAUTHE, so we're really delighted to have Anita on board. Next up, Dr. Aaron Tham. So Aaron is the subject component lead in tourism at University of the Sunshine Coast, just up the road here in Queensland. He's also the secretary for 2023 for CAUTHE. And obviously, Aaron, you've been involved in CAUTHE for many, many years. And he's also the Teaching and Learning SIG co-chair at CAUTHE. So welcome, Aaron. We're really glad to have you on the panel today. Professor Candice Harris, and happy birthday, Candice. I hope that's all right. I know that was yesterday. Candice is professor and head of Department of Management in the Faculty of Business, Economics and Law at AUT. Her primary areas of research are careers, gendered experiences of work, paid and unpaid, and advancement. And beyond AUT, she is co-chair of the Te Manahua New Zealand University's Women in Leadership Steering Group. And she neglected to say a fellow of CAUTHE. So welcome, Candice. And last but certainly not least, all the way from the Netherlands, Perry Hobson. Professor Perry Hobson is director of the Academy of Tourism at Breda University in the Netherlands. Previously at SCU, so back on your home turf. Perry was, I'm very grateful, Perry was the head of school at the time at SCU and hired me back in 2003. So that's 20 years ago, if you can believe it. But I think we're still, you know, it doesn't feel like 20 years ago, not at all. And after leading the ICE accreditation body, he spent 10 years in Malaysia as PVC for global engagement at both Taylor's and Sunway universities. Perry has served twice as chair of CAUTHE and also is a fellow. So we've got two of our fellows here today on the panel. And he's also been made a fellow of CHME or CHME in the UK. And last week, congratulations, received the Stevenson Fletcher Award from ICRE, which is very prestigious at the conference in the USA. So welcome, Perry. All right, great. Excellent. So my first question to the panel members, and I hope it's okay, I might start with you, Anita, is if you could travel anywhere in the world, where would you go and why? Just a brief explanation.
I mean, it's really difficult. It's a difficult question to ask to a tourism academic, I think, because I think that's one of the things we do. We do this also to travel. I feel probably I would love to go back to southern Italy, to Puglia, where my father was born. Of course, the inclement weather that we've had in the past few months didn't help. Had a bit of warmth will be useful now, but I think it's more about connecting back with my roots and getting a little bit of family time together, enjoying good food and dipping myself in the Mediterranean. I think that will be definitely on top of my list at the moment.
Sounds fantastic. Thanks, Anita. Aaron, what about you? It's hard to leave the Sunshine Coast, but
yeah, if you can hear me, my probably destination that I will go to, and I did promise the family, would be Japan, and it'll be next year. Japan has a special meaning for us. My wife and I conceived our child in Japan. The honeymoon was in Japan. Our best man is Japanese. We just probably, have this love relationship with Japan. So yeah, I think that's an area that I will go back to after COVID.
Excellent, Aaron. That's getting a good reaction here, face to face. All right. Thanks, Aaron. Candice, hello. What about you?
Kia ora koutou. I don't really care where. Mine's the how. I would like to be on a cruise ship in the middle of, don't care where, but I'd like the Wi-Fi to break down within 12 hours of leaving. And I'd also like it to have a world-class teenagers club. So somewhere where I can't be emailed. I don't really care where it is.
That sounds really good to me as well at the moment. Thanks, Candice. All right. And Perry. Oh, you need a...
All right, I'll borrow that one. Well, funnily enough, I'm sort of on the way because when I got the question, I was thinking about where I'm wanting to go and where I'm heading to. And actually, my answer is going to be Byron Bay, because I'm looking forward to getting back to our house. And in fact, I'll be traveling down there to that. And so for me, living away from Byron has been a long time now, about 12 years, 10 years in Malaysia, now in the Netherlands. So for me, I'm very keen. We'll come back as a family, hopefully next year for a holiday. And then look forward to getting back home. So yeah, that's my travel.
Excellent. Isn't it exciting to be able to travel again? But no doubt the weather in the Netherlands is fantastic.
Summertime good?
Yes.
I'm not so
Yeah. So Byron Bay is looking good in about November, December. All right. Thanks, everyone. The next question, before we get into sort of the more, I don't want to say serious stuff, but perhaps the more reflective, significant information is, how long have you been involved in CAUTHE? And can you tell us one way that CAUTHE has helped your career thus far? So I might just mix it up this time. So Perry, since you've got the mic, I might start with you, if that's okay.
How did I get involved with CAUTHE?
Oh,
Is that on now? There we go.
you have not half an hour, not half an hour.
Yeah, I know. I was going to say this takes a long back in time, because the reason I'm really sitting here is because the first CAUTHE conference I came to, funny enough, I was staying right next to it at Broadbeach, was at what was then the Pan Pacific, the Sofitel. And I bumped into this unlikely group of people, including Neil Leeper, Gary Prosser, etc., Bev Sparks. And that was my first entrance to Australia, was attending the CAUTHE conference. And at that time, someone said to me, they said, look, they're looking for someone to teach down at this new university, which has started, called Southern Cross University. So I said, really? I said, where's that? They said, it's a place called Lismore. I thought, where's that? Anyway, so I did a quick trip down to Lismore, and then they took me over to Byron Bay. We sat at the beach pub, and then he said, so what do you think about the job? So I said, well, and you got to remember, I was living in Hong Kong in those days, which is a very crowded place. So that looked fantastic. And so that was really, thanks to CAUTHE, that first conference, that opened the door up. And then later we hosted the next CAUTHE conference at Coffs Harbour. So I started to get very involved with CAUTHE after that. And then that led to becoming chair twice. And so CAUTHE has been a very major part of my life for a long time. So that's why I was really pleased you were holding the mid-year meeting this week, because that gave me a chance to get back and to see everyone. So if it hadn't been really for my involvement with CAUTHE, I don't think so many of the things that I've done and enjoyed doing would have happened. So I've got a lot to be thankful for.
Excellent. Thanks, Perry. And I remember the Coffs Harbour conference as well. Many of us would here. And I just saw Jenny Small sneak in there. Hello. So that was my first CAUTHE in the role also. So yeah, what a journey and an adventure. And here you are back at Southern Cross. Thanks, Perry. So we might go to Candice now.
Yeah, I haven't done the math to figure out exactly how long, but it must be close to 20 years, I think. I've always worked in business schools. Sometimes we've taught tourism, sometimes we haven't. So as being part of a management academic, I think CAUTHE just gave me an out. It gave me an out to have some relationship with my PhD, which was originally looking at women's experiences as business travellers. And I've got to say, it's where I met Jenny and Erica. And we were sort of huddled in corners, you know, whispering about criticality, because we were a bit new in terms of CAUTHE. And I think that friendship really helped us in terms of motivating us to start the critical issue stream as well. But there's been some fabulous people at CAUTHE, and I think what I've always really respected at the conferences is people generally have been treated very well at CAUTHE conferences. There's been enthusiasm for PhD student work seen presented, etc. And I just can't say that's always the case at academic conferences. So it was always something I really looked forward to every February, and very much looking forward to getting back to Hobart, I think is the next one, correct?
Yes, it is in February. So hope to see all of you there. Thanks, Candice. That's excellent. Anita, might go to you.
I feel like I'm a bit of the kid on the block at the moment because
That's all right.
between Candice, I've been, I think my first conference for CAUTHE, and that was the first time I've had sort of interaction, was in 2019 in Cairns. And I still remember I felt so out of the water, like a fish out of the water. I just came back from a, industry experience over 10 years, and I was all new to academia. I had just literally started my PhD, and in Torrens, we only have a handful of people that have already graduated. So I was very much in a space of solitude, if that made sense. And I really think, I've since that conference, and I've been in every conference since then, what I found was, very important for me in joining CAUTHE and, interacting with, all the other CAUTHE attendees, etc., was to really build that connection and sort of that trust with other other colleagues that were in the same space as me at that moment. And since then, I've met so many people, and now have some long-term friendships that have born out of that. Some of my current collaborators I've met at CAUTHE. So I think that sort of opened up my landscape. If something that obviously Torrens being such a new university and young, we didn't have that PhD presence, and that really helped me sort of broaden up my scope and increase that collaboration and feel a sense of belonging.
That's fantastic, Anita, and great to hear what CAUTHE has meant for you. And again, congratulations on your PhD. All right, thanks. Aaron, last to you, but not least.
I'm just looking at the calendar of conferences, and I probably remember maybe my first one as a early career PhD type student back in 2011 in Adelaide, and then the year after in Latrobe, and thereafter moving on with the job in the Sunshine Coast. We've stayed on, and we've successfully become chapter members at CAUTHE, serving in different capacities, SIGs, now on the executive, and I've learned a lot. It's a bit weird coming in as a student because I've already had industry and publications before that. I remember being mentored by Leo and then by Perry, and they were like, how can you be an ECR? You're not. And I'm like, but I am, by definition, I am. And so it's opened up many doors, and I think through COVID, we've learned as well to support one another. And this is largely as a family, as you know. My department or discipline, there's only 4 of us. And so we're very much seeing CAUTHE as the extended family, and it's been beneficial on many fronts. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. So such a sort of wide-ranging experiences there and history with CAUTHE, and it's for you, Anita, 2019, and Perry going back 94. Okay, almost 30 years. And that's what I wanted on the panel was that range of experiences. So thank you for sharing that. As we're looking to renew invoices for our CAUTHE members, a new thing that we've done is a list of all of the benefits that come with CAUTHE membership at the different levels. This isn't a promotional thing, but in looking at it, it was so pleasing to see all of the things that was very much reflected in what you were all saying today of what CAUTHE can provide. And CAUTHE, as you'll see in our strategic plan a bit later on, is for its members. So it's for all of us. So I think it's really important to reflect on that and what it can still do for us going forward as we face some of these challenges and issues that we might speak about now. So, as I said, I've asked each of the panel members to reflect on a central challenge or opportunity, or a challenge with an opportunity that's been important to them, or that the panel members think CAUTHE can help us with. So, in terms of ordering, sorry, I'm mixing it up a bit, panel members, but I might start with you, Anita, if that's okay.
Very fine.
Right.
Yeah, when you asked that question, I really thought carefully about what I want to sort of discuss, and this came in conjunction with a bit of a discussion I had with one of my supervisors just after I got my conferral, and she mentioned how after she had finished her PhD, she could not get out of the couch for 6 months. And I laughed, of course, at that because at the moment I feel like sometimes ECRs don't really have that luxury, and so I think that's sort of the challenge I wanted to bring in today. The fact that even during the PhD and as an early ECR, we are increasingly feeling the pressure of excelling in multiple domains simultaneously, and coming out of the PhD as if we are already established. We need to, publish, and we need to get a job. We need to, show how many publications we have. That we are able to secure funding, that we are very good teachers, and it feels almost like that the part of the PhD, or the journey of the PhD, that should be really all about exploring and creativity. It's sort of a bit lost in the pressure of being strategic about your career after that. And of course, I mean, there are many types of careers after the PhD, but, for those that want to stay in academia, I had done my industry career before, and I was quite happy with that. And for those that want to stay in academia, I think really feeling these pressures can put the early career researchers in a, particular state, of high competition, again, increasing pressure, and that leads to, of course, having burnout or issues related to mental health, etc. I speak from an early career research, and then of course these are not new challenges that we face in academia, but I also feel like that there is also an opportunity at the moment, considering that tourism, hospitality, events academia has established itself. We're well established. We have people like Harry or Candice that have been in academia for a long time. We really have the opportunity to tap into this knowledge and these lived experiences that they have through, for example, mentorship. So I feel like at the moment, ECRs, yes, we are in a position where we feel all these pressures, but we have the opportunity to really tap into this knowledge and these experiences. I was part of, for the last 2 years, of the CAUTHE mentorship program, and I found that increasingly valuable as I go through it. It connects you with people that have been there, that can really guide you and give you some direction as to where your career should, or what your career should look like, and sometimes also that harsh reality that you need to deal with, but they might have strategies that they helps ECRs in sort of their in establishing themselves as academics after the PhD journey. And of course, I mean, that also increases collaboration. You might end up collaborating with mentors, you broaden up your networks, and you are able to also deal with and connect with people that are at your same stage and share these challenges as well. And I think that goes also with another opportunity, which I think as ECRs we should really take to our hearts, and that is to somehow challenge a little bit the status of what the academic requirements are. It's not all about the quantity, it's not all about equality, it's all about how we deal with each other and how we connect with each other. And when CAUTHE had raised and initiated the Be Kind campaign, I was a big advocate. I was still a PhD then. I felt that was definitely the first step to identify how we can really be a bit more collaborative and constructive with each other. We do feel the pressure as ECRs to compete with each other for jobs, for the amount of publication, the citations, and I think we should just shift a little bit that perspective and really look more at what really matters, when we are building our career, and maybe more the long-term plan rather the short-term plan of having to achieve all these targets. I've dealt with and I've been discussing this issue with other ECRs, and of course, this is not just relevant to Australia. I have these conversations with ECRs all around the world, and really, finding a way where academia can become a bit more kind and the system can become a bit slower for us to really have that time during our ECR time to explore, be curious, and really think about more of the long-term impact that we can make rather than necessarily the short-term, challenges or the short-term targets that we need to hit to potentially, go to that point. I do speak from my position of privilege because I, compared to many other ECRs, have a permanent full-time job. And of course, that comes with its own challenges, dealing with teaching and, teaching loads and administration, etc. But I know a lot of the ECRs also deal with a very precarious condition at the moment. And I really feel that, these increased connection, but also a bit more empathy about what we deal with and, how we should take on the challenges with a bit more kindness and a bit more collaboration. I think that's sort of, to me, an opportunity that we really need to juice out.
Thanks for that, Anita. And I should say we'll have an opportunity for questions once we've heard from all of the panel members. But a couple of core messages there about the pressures of ECRs for ECRs and what CAUTHE has done and what we can continue to do to support. But I like that notion of kindness and collaboration, and Anita, and thinking not just about the quantity. Or quality is important, but not just the quantity, and what our long-term impacts are. So thank you for that perspective. I think that's really, really important to hear that from you and from our ECR colleagues. All right, thanks so much. So I might go to you now, Aaron.
Cool. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at the panel. In fact, this conversation is timely. We had a special interest group meeting for teaching and learning yesterday, and one of the last questions I asked the panelists was, what does tourism, hospitality, and event education look like in 2050? And where will we be and what the future will be like? And on that note as well, from a CAUTHE perspective, as we've alluded to, it is about the people. More importantly, it's about us. What do we want to see in terms of our future as an association, as colleagues in the field? The challenge for me has been just also looking at this notion about the human resource and the talent we've got. As much as we are in business schools, we teach things like succession planning, but is it really done? And to what extent have we done enough or leading to that into the future? We've got an esteemed group of fellows, we've got mentoring in place, and I wonder if there are areas that we can actually develop into to help not just ECRs, as what Anita mentioned, but mid-career and others doing that transition. Or what about high school students thinking about careers in academia or other non-academic frames? Very little, maybe even in the field of tourism succession planning has been thought about. Our industry is small, very small enterprises. When the family business is up because someone is too old and retires, often it's a family member that picks it up. And if they don't, then sometimes it doesn't happen. It doesn't exist in the next few years. And we want to continue to see the success of CAUTHE over the next few years. And what steps do we have in place? So, for example, chairs, deputy chairs, and that kind of rolling plans go on. Are there things that we have as best practices from our presidents to be to guide those who are in the next generation of leadership. And I think that's an exciting time. That's areas where we can actually think about future planning and backcasting in that sense. The other area that I know, and Anita's alluded to, the pressures, is this area about career mobility. With any of our HDR students, the institution is very keen to get them to the finish line, assess, convert, and then it's almost like a open ocean where you start to navigate your sails, and depending on where the job takes you. I wonder if there's scope for us to think about what inputs or what preparations we have around careers in academia and non-academic streams. I've been trying to also lobby the institution where I am and many other places. How can we prepare students for non-academic careers? Because the stats tell us that probably 6%, and that's quite a bleak outlook, will get to professoriate in this current landscape, and that means many others may want to think of other careers as they go. The other thing about career mobility, Perry is an example who's been to different places, circumstances have allowed him to, and many others who may be in a similar circumstance who are able to do so. But what is it like? And I've been touching base with our CAUTHE members all over the world recently to say, so what has it been like 6 months into your life in the UK? Because it is quite different. Yes, the role is identical, but what is it like? What are your tips for people thinking about the move? Is it a cat issue, dog issue, a baby issue, housing issue, kids issue? And those things become useful, I use a broader word, communities of practice, to shape how international mobility is like, and what are the considerations. And I think that's something that we can do now with this rich resource of people who moved around the world, having been through CAUTHE at different stages of their life. So that's from me. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Really appreciate that. And that it's about people, talent, and just, I guess, our role in that mobility and in future planning for careers, both inside academia, which is where most of us are, but also outside of academia. And I think you said, did you say 6% will move to the professoriate?
Yeah, and there was some stats that we were hearing from some of the papers that were published across the fields, not just in tourism. And increasingly now, I mean, many of you know I'm not in a position to talk about successful promotion outcomes. I'm writing my 4th this year. But yeah, it's increasingly harder. The stats are higher. And so the numbers who actually get to professoriates is that diminishing pattern. And it was alarming when I saw it at 6%. But I think, you know, the jobs are disappearing, and that's the problem. And that's why the percentage has diminished, because it's a funnel system now. And how do we think of ways to actually keep the talent where they should be is the broad question.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Aaron. Lots to think about there. And those mobility options aren't open to everybody for different reasons, and because of equity reasons as well. So good, thank you. I wonder, Candice, that might sort of lead on perhaps to some of the things you wanted to say. And I know you do a lot of research in these sorts of areas in careers, but yeah, might throw to you now. Oh, you're just on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Erica. A few sort of loose thoughts and ideas about what's happening in universities and the future of CAUTHE, etc. I guess one thing, I've been with a university that actually went through a large financial recovery program. A lot of universities in New Zealand are actually doing that. And what that often results is a pretty close look at programs and jobs and livelihoods and people's careers as well. So I guess it's quite sobering that we need to remember that there's a lot of business in universities these days. If you're not financially viable, it's quite concerning. I would love to see, in a perfect world, perhaps a broader lens on tourism and hospitality education. I wonder if focusing still on education, it's in the CAUTHE name as well, it does put that lens on specific programs rather than knowledge. Is it time to consider the role of tourism and hospitality knowledge and learning, rather than just perhaps at that educational level, which is often equated in universities as programs. I also wonder if it's time for us as a group to sort of look at a lot of the concepts that are pretty core to tourism. So Aaron was just talking about mobility, hospitality in terms of care and provision, if you like. There are a lot of contexts we haven't explored. You know, we often talk about holidays still, and yet the average worker in New Zealand gets 5 weeks annual leave a year. Perhaps there's new avenues that we need to be broader to start exploring in terms of hospitality and aged care provision, hospitality in hospitals, etc. Because I know one area that still attracts a fair bit of funding in universities is health faculties. So anyway, they're just the musings of a mad woman, but it is something that I've been sort of thinking about a bit more, because we've also got some, I think, excellent case studies, etc. I still use case studies about tourism and hospitality organisations when I'm just teaching general management subjects. So it doesn't just sit within tourism and hospitality programs. The other thing I think we need to challenge ourselves as academics is I see increasing impact and demand for, in the research space, it's not just publishing in journals, and that has got several of us quite far in our careers, but I think the dial has really extended to, it is also about what is the impact of your research. And we're actually going to be increasingly evaluated that with our New Zealand Performance-Based Research Fund, which is a national evaluation of your research. There is more and more demand for what is the impact, not just where are you publishing, but what does this mean to society? Because we're often generating this research with taxpayer money. And importantly, huge demands for, can you translate your research to public audiences? So while publishing in journals is good, and we're often talking to each other, but how does wider public audiences access our research findings? I think the conversation has been really successful actually in this space. I've had a couple of things published in there where, you know, I wrote something on school holidays. I mean, I'm not splitting the atom, believe you me, but it was on the school holidays. 20,000 readers. I can probably guarantee I'm not going to get 20,000 readers of most journal articles. So yeah, so I think there's a bit of a stretch for academics in the research space. Increasing entrepreneurialism demanded in terms of being able to attract research funding, but also increasing demand around showing what is the impact of your research and how do you translate it. So I don't know if this is food for thought for CAUTHE. Maybe we need a media directory, which sort of showcases CAUTHE members. And because I know the media often complain to universities, you've got all these great academics, but none of them will talk to media. And so maybe we need to be a bit more active in that space, so that we as a community get a bit more known as well. Anyway, happy to be grilled about any of those thoughts when it comes to questions as well.
That's great, Candice. And I'm sure we might have a few questions towards the end, but yeah, the sort of takeaway there that I think we're hearing is a broader lens for how we think about education, and also the impact of our research. That was really interesting, that piece that you wrote. Was that in the conversation or? Yeah. Okay. And the increasing entrepreneurship that's sort of required in our roles. So yeah, I think there's definitely a lot there for CAUTHE to think about. Excellent. Thanks so much for those reflections, Candice. All right. So Perry, hello.
Well, hello. And look, it's great to be back, and great to see so many familiar faces and so many new faces here, and people I've known from all sorts of parts of the world, Aaron and Cindy and Tracy joining us here as well. And when Erica sent me the message, what I wanted to sort of talk about, and listening to the other thoughts that we discussed on email, I thought I would look more broadly outside than inside academia. And from where I'm sitting halfway around the world now, one of our big challenges is, as we've come out of COVID, how things have changed. So before COVID, a lot of the discussion was beginning to be about over-tourism and what we were going to do. We then went into a phase of no tourism, and we've propelled ourselves out of that, so that most of the data is showing that we will be exceeding where we were in 2019 by the end of next year. In most places, Asia's a little bit lagging because of the way that money was distributed well in developed countries, but not well at all in developing countries. The next challenge that's arriving on our doorstep is going to be this challenge between, I think, tourism, the transition we're going to go through as a planet, and the tensions this is bringing. So where I'm in the Netherlands at the moment, the tension points, and if you've read in the last week, Amsterdam has decided to ban cruise ships. Amsterdam Airport is going to drop 60,000 flights out of its arrivals. And the focus is on how we can manage tourism and the environmental impacts that tourism is causing. So the discussion at my university now is how we bring in a compulsory climate change course for all our students. The tension in my university, and it was quite interesting to hear this point about we'd like academics to speak out more. My marketing department is trying to restrain a couple of my colleagues from being so outspoken. So we have a tension there because I've got colleagues who belong to not only Extinction Rebellion, but Scientist Rebellion. So at our last meeting in the Netherlands, we had a panel of 4 academics talking about their frustrations as academics, as scientists, and that they can no longer be quiet, and they feel they have to speak out and have to take action, which does also mean gluing yourself to things and taking over parts of the airport. So the tensions are coming forward. And just listening to the United Nations Secretary General today talking about the issues of climate change, that we are reaching boiling point. So whilst tourism is a small percentage of that, and you can argue it's only about 3% of the problem, the challenge is there is a problem. And it doesn't matter how small you are part of that problem, it's a big problem. And having just spent 5 days in Phoenix at the ICRE conference, we're walking outside, I got the distinct feeling that a turkey must feel like at Christmas time when you go into the oven. It was bloody hot. Now, this has been the longest single period of time, and you've only got to watch the news this morning. 9 countries around the Mediterranean have now got fires, tourists being evacuated, and this is a repeated pattern where obviously we've seen parts of this in Australia too. So the challenge, I think, going forward for us will be this tension as we go forward. We had a long time that when I first arrived in Australia, we only ever taught one word about tourism, which was largely about growth, why it was good for the economy, growing jobs, growing more. And the challenge, I think, is going to be realizing before COVID that we'd reached some limits. The challenge now going forward about that is going to be how tourism will fit into a different world and a space. And the challenge is, I think, for us, is that tourism is very visible. We've got the planes, we've got the cruise ships. They're very visible. And so in my campus, we're having this sort of discussion because we've also got a school of games. And they're going, well, we're fine. We're not doing anything nasty. So the Netherlands has 7 major supercomputer centers who use massive amounts of energy and water. So it's not visible, but believe me, it's there. I think the last figure I saw was that Bitcoin mining, which as far as I can understand, produces absolutely nothing of any conceivable benefit to anybody, used the entire energy supply of Kazakhstan last year to produce an algorithm. So you've really got to wonder, but we are very visible in that. So I think going forward, tourism is going to be, whether we like it or not, really in the gun sights. Now, when I joined Southern Cross University back in '95, we'd grown out of the environmental school. And I was very pleased when I was head of school there, we introduced a new degree in environmental tourism and also another one in Indigenous tourism, because we realized the sorts of things that I could see that was going to be happening in the future. Now, sometimes the challenge is how fast that happens. But clearly time has rolled on. In many universities, tourism got pushed more towards business, and we forgot about some of the other things. Those other things are now coming back, I think. And I think this is going to be really the challenge that we're going to be facing. And, so the conversation where I am at the moment is how to rebrand tourism. So when I arrived in the Netherlands, I sat down with the other directors of the other 4 or 5 schools, and they said, we got to change the name. I was like, well, tourism sounds pretty good to me. I said, students are not interested. Now, I've got 1,200 students studying tourism. You probably think that sounds pretty good. But if you go back 10 years, I had 2,500. And I'm losing those numbers rapidly. All the programs are. In the last 5 years, we're down on average 33% in our student numbers. And they're showing no signs of coming back after COVID. So I think these are the challenges. If if you want to study tourism, but everyone is saying, well, you shouldn't be traveling, this is going to present us as an academic area with yet another problem. So I think we're going to have to think about how we are collectively going to deal with the issues that we're facing. I was at the APTA conference in Chiang Mai. So as you can see, my carbon footprint is not good, but I was at the APTA conference in Chiang Mai. Only 3 papers Bruce, Breda and I were there, only 3 papers relating to anything to do with environmental issues and tourism. At the ICRE conference in Phoenix, just 6 papers, over 650 registrations there. So as an academic area, we're really not engaging much with that either. We've got lots of very small micro studies. Do people prefer A over B? We've got lots of statistical things, but we're not dealing with some bigger issues that I feel will be facing us collectively. So just to add to the thoughts and discussion, that's my tuppence worth. Erica.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And given our discussions about mobility and my question about if you could travel anywhere in the world, we do have a bit of a tension in our mobility as tourism academics, you know, but also just the climate issues we're seeing at the moment. I was just in the States probably a bit after you, Perry, and it was 47 degrees in California and fires, and what we're seeing in Greece now. And I can tell you when I got home, I thought, I don't want to travel anywhere again for a while, plus all the, you know, the long haul flights and things. So, yeah, I think this is a bit of a challenge for us in CAUTHE, and sort of how we grapple with the climate issues and environmental impact. Because I think post-pandemic things, everyone's so excited to get back out there, as we all are, but you know, I think that's something we have to keep researching. I did just want to ask, and then I'll open up to questions for the panel. If you don't call it tourism, what would you call it, or what was your VC or whoever head of what do you think?
Well, okay. So I walked into an absolute firestorm, and I'll be quite honest. You know, sometimes when you move countries, you sort of you know, it takes you some time to understand things. So. What I realized was that the tourism wasn't the word, because we have a school of tourism, we have leisure and events, and it became quite clear from what we could see that it wasn't very precise. So our hotel school wasn't suffering, because Jean said, okay, I'd study hotel management, I can work in a hotel, I get it. Tourism, well, what is this? And we've got specializations in e-tourism, tourism business, and it wasn't, and I still feel it wasn't clear. Leisure was having the same problem, but what they'd done was they'd made it much clearer. You can do business events, live dance and music. And those were terms that connected much better with tourism, with students, sorry. So under tourism, our problem was we didn't have those clear specializations. But what we do have is a very strong minor in aviation. Now, we work very closely with the aviation area, and I have 6 staff who specialize in that. We have a minor, we attract students from other universities just to do a minor in aviation. So aviation, we discovered, is not seen by students who want to study tourism as being about tourism. So I said, well, perhaps we make that a major. Now, of course, my colleagues who teach environment, who are involved in the environmental area and now see me as the worst person on the planet. My challenge is to get students through the door. My other challenge I see is, how do I help to transform the industry? So if I ignore the aviation industry, I'm not going to transform it. And so the battle that I'm facing, the tension is, how do I get students to engage it? Because they're going to work in airports, airlines, aviation, which is a huge sector. And it's not like we're going to stop flying tomorrow. The challenge is, and when I even met with the head of TH&E, remember TH&E has about 50,000 employees. He said, Perry, I need you to be able to produce people who understand the future of my business. Right now, my customers don't get sustainability, but I know that's going to be important. So I need students who understand that. So herein lies the tension that I'm dealing with right now.
Thanks, Perry. And thanks to all of you for those really important insights and reflections. And I think we really appreciate the future focus, what we can do about it, and what we don't have to solve that right now, but what CAUTHE might be able to do in research and education and in our course profile, because we do have issues with, similar to you, Perry, in the Netherlands, where our numbers are dropping, not across the board, but yeah. So what is it that our students are wanting in this space? All right, so I will stop talking, but I just wanted to, or Candice, were you going to say something there? I just saw you were off mute.
Oh, just something very minor. We used to have a course in our human resource major called International Human Resource Management. It's not terribly exciting. So we've changed the course and it's now called Global Mobility. And it does actually attract enrollments from across the university. It covers everything from patriation, repatriation, the plight of refugees as well, residents or those seeking residency. But it has been quite interesting what's sort of the global appeal. So I don't know if that offers any hope for thinking more about that mobility space rather than tourism longer term.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's a much broader look and a more critical look on mobility, travel, tourism. Thanks, Candice. So I just wanted to check in maybe first with our online colleagues on Zoom. Any comments or questions for any of our panel members? For Anita, Aaron, Candice, or Perry? If not, that's okay.
Something Perry, Perry said very quickly. We had some people that suggested nobody in the university should travel for reasons of our carbon footprint, etc. And some of us did actually say, well, actually, some of us are plant-based. And, that if you look at the impact of the dairy industry as well. So if we're going to start examining people's individual travel patterns, I think we really need a much broader look on perhaps our individual carbon footprints than just saying you cannot travel anymore. But that's just a personal thought.
Yeah, thanks, Candice.
Yeah, no, I just support. I think it's a very good point. And one of the challenges, I think, for us as a university, putting together a climate change course is that. Now, out of the 7,000 university students at Breda University, about 3,500 are studying hospitality, tourism, leisure, and events. And that's been one of the discussions about how should we do that. And I came across one British university which had decided it would only have exchange partners that students could get to by rail. But then, of course, they realize you're cutting off whole parts of the world that you can now suddenly engage with, unless you've got really long train trips. And other ones are clearly impossible. So that does present those sorts of challenges, I think. And I think part of it now is understanding the problem. So one of the reasons I'm in Australia this week was to launch the new climate action barometer for international students. And we've got 8 universities in Australia and New Zealand. So the University of Auckland, Sydney University, Tasmania have all signed up to be part of that, University of Western Sydney. And so the goal of this is to actually help universities measure the impact, because we keep talking about it, but we don't know quite what we're actually dealing with. So as you pointed out, Candice, it's very important that we actually understand the production of beef, for example, has got, is much more significant than actually all the air travel. So as you said, is it we need to focus on changing our diet if we want to travel, or how do we get that balance right? And I think that's going to be the important thing. As I emphasized earlier, my worry is that tourism, because people can see planes and ships, we will be inevitably an easy target, though we're by no means, dare I say, in the scale of the problem, the worst offender, but we're the easy target.
As you say, very visible. Okay, I'll go to Felicity and then Anna, and then I might see if there's a question around the room here, and then we'll probably need to close for a brief morning tea break ahead of the mid-year meeting. So Felicity, I can see your hand up there.
Thanks very much. And I just want to thank everyone on the panel. I took something away from each and every one of you. I really enjoyed that. Perry, obviously you spoke to my heart with everything that you were saying about around sustainability and the environment and how we bring that all back in. I'm always thinking about tourism as a kind of transformative practice and how it can be transformative. I'm constantly gesturing towards the future, and I was really thrilled that so many of you were speaking around that future sort of lens. Candice, I was struck in particular about your comment with regards to education and knowledge and the kind of differences between those two terms. In particular, I guess, because for me, it's often a case, and I hope this resonates with you all, and I'm not on my own here, it's as much about educating our colleagues within the university about the importance of tourism. It's sort of seen as a less than noble academic kind of trajectory. And we often think, for example, tourism borrows from other disciplines, which puts them always in this sort of hierarchy. They're above us. We just sort of take their theories and try to apply them in a different context. And I'm trying to speak back often to those disciplines and say, well, actually, I took your geographical theory and put it through the lens of tourism, and here's a bit back for you and your theory. We can speak back to them, which is what resonated for me with that knowledge notion. It's as much about educating our colleagues about the beauty is tourism knowledge and what you can actually do when you start to think about tourism through these kind of interdisciplinary lenses, which in itself is so crucial to sustainability and being able to think sustainably. So in a sense, just that pedagogy of tourism knowledge already holds a catalyst, I think, for what is so important in sustainability moving forward. We can think across those domains. I'm very proud that our university still holds tourism in a social sciences domain. So I'm really thrilled that we do that and resist that urge to sort of push down the business focus. But I wanted to get from you, Candice, a little bit more on that idea of kind of the relationships between the difference between, I guess, education and knowledge as you see it.
Yeah, look, good point. I perhaps need to think through it a bit more, but I think my concern about just putting it under that lens of education or the basket of education is it's often tied to programs, and the numbers that I think Perry just read out about, the decreased enrollments. I think those are quite alarming, and I think we should be having conversations about what this means for us as a community for the future as well. However, organisations are spending tremendous amounts of money on wellbeing programs. Every organisation, mental health issues for organisations are through the roof, etc. People need breaks. People need breaks with families, etc. It's not just going on your big global trip once in a decade. It's small sort of micro breaks, etc. And so this stuff should be explored. It should be taught, the importance of it, etc. But I just don't know if we've linked up enough. And if we keep just saying that we're an organisation about education, does that mean we're only going to be seen about do you have a tourism degree or not, rather than that sort of wider lens on it? But do I have the absolute answer? No. But I also, after 25 plus years in universities, I am sick of really seeing tourism and hospitality get battered around a little bit in terms of can we afford it this year or can't we? I don't know if every university can afford to be teaching it, but I would argue the same arguments could be made around Spanish or classics or all of the other things. So,
Thanks, Candice. Lots to think about there, and I think for CAUTHE. And thanks for your question, Felicity. Anna, to you.
Kia ora, everyone. Thank you. I am sorry I was late. I had to download Zoom again, but I really loved tuning in to hear what everyone had said and really appreciate it being at the sort of bottom of New Zealand. I'm really interested in actually CAUTHE's response to our future challenges. I was just overseas myself at my first conference in 4 years, and they decided at the conference to only have their annual conference every 2 years, no longer an annual conference, as a way of reducing carbon emissions, but everything else. And then in the alternate years, do an online, similar to what we're doing today. And I was wondering what the panel members thought about that, and if it's maybe too transformative in terms of where we're going with CAUTHE, or, other alternatives. Thank you.
Yeah, I might just jump in and respond there, and just in the interest of time, Anna, but it's a really good question, and it is something that CAUTHE has grappled with, even before the pandemic. And look, I think later today, we're talking about the strategy, and then the exec has a session on how we will implement our CAUTHE strategy, and I think one of those elements around sustainability is part of that, and we're going to discuss it. But it's a good point, and I think also where we might move things to online as well, and the democratization of that for people attending and not traveling. So yeah, we're still once a year right now for our conference, but yeah, maybe that's something we engage in discussing again. All right, so I think we've got to put that on the list as well. So maybe just one more question from anyone on the floor here, and then we'll finish up. And thanks for your question, Anna. Laurie, yes.
Knowledge versus.
Sorry, we need
tourism.
mics.
Is this one working? Yeah, tourism knowledge versus tourism programs, because we have for more than 30 years, I've watched numbers decrease and degrees get shrunk down into majors, etc. But there's still people working in this industry making decisions about tourism that have degrees in something, from a wide range of disciplines. And we need to focus more on getting tourism knowledge into those other degrees. So they're considering tourism when they're studying environmental management or urban planning or town planning or commerce, etc., rather than trying to get more students into our shrinking programs. Maybe that's an approach to take. And how do we make sure that all the people that are making decisions in the tourism industry have come from it with the lens of knowledge that we can bring?
Thanks, Laurie.
Sorry. That was
Okay, no, that's I think kind of a good reflection to sort of end us on. Thanks to everybody on the panel for such sort of engaging, thoughtful discussion. I really enjoyed that, and I think everyone here at the Gold Coast and online has as well. And as Felicity said, I took something away from each of you, and a lot of food for thought for CAUTHE as we sort of work towards implementing our strategy. And a couple of high level things really jumped out. The role of people and care, mental health and well-being, our sort of ongoing future and viability. And I know that's something we grapple with CAUTHE every year, but maybe we have to think differently about it. And as Candice said, think beyond the boundaries of how we currently sort of construe things. And again, the climate change environmental impact aspect. Thanks for raising that, Perry, because sometimes I think right now and post-pandemic, if we are, it does get lost. So it's really interesting to hear what's happening in Europe. So thanks, everyone. That's probably all we've got time for now. So online participants, I hope you can join us back at 11:30 or whatever, that will be 1:30 in New Zealand or wherever you are. Join us back online and go get a cup of tea or coffee. And we're going to do the same here on campus. And we'll see you back shortly. Thanks, everyone.